Picture the absolute pinnacle of elite global sports for a second.
Oh, you mean like the billionaire-funded stadiums and the crazy sports science labs?
Exactly, yeah. The place is tracking every single calorie a player eats. And these kids who've been groomed in these, like, hyper-competitive academies since they could literally walk.
Right, it's a massive, highly engineered machine.
It really is. But now I want you to contrast that with a kid born in a refugee camp with absolutely no running water.
A completely different universe.
Completely. A kid whose first real taste of organized soccer was just this free inner-city after-school league. And today, we are looking at how that kid completely conquered that elite system.
It is, honestly. I mean, it's arguably one of the most remarkable life stories in modern sports.
Yeah.
We're talking, of course, about Alphonso Davies.
We are. And to really understand the sheer magnitude of his story, we have to start on November 27th, 2022.
Oh, wow, that specific day. The Qatar World Cup.
Yes. You are standing right inside the electric atmosphere of the Khalifa International Stadium. The noise is just absolutely deafening.
I can't even imagine the pressure in that building.
Right. So Canada's men's national soccer team is playing their second match of the tournament against a really formidable Croatian side. The whistle blows.
Yeah.
And then almost immediately, history happens.
Literally 67 seconds into the match, Tajon Buchanan sends this looping cross into the box. And flying through the air, like completely suspended in time, is Alphonso Davies.
He connects, and he just heads it right home.
It was incredible.
Which, by the way, was the fastest goal of the tournament up to that point. But historically, for you listening, the context here is just everything. Because this was the Canadian men's national team's first ever goal at a FIFA World Cup. Ever.
Exactly, because you really have to look at the drought they were in. The last time the Canadian men were in the World Cup was, what, 1986 in Mexico?
Yeah, 1986. And it was pretty grim.
It was. In that tournament, they lost all 3 of their matches. They allowed 5 goals, and they scored 0.
Euro goals. Right. So there was this massive 36-year ghost just hanging over the whole program. And to add even more cinematic tension to this, Davies himself had actually missed a penalty kick against Belgium just days prior.
Which is huge. That missed penalty was a really heavy psychological burden.
I mean, how could it not be?
Exactly. When you're the face of a nation's sporting hopes, and you miss a penalty on the world stage,
yeah.
I mean, that can just crush a player.
Oh, for sure.
So that flying header in the 67th second, it wasn't just a goal. It was redemption. It was the shattering of this 3.5-decade curse.
But the real question we are tackling today is, like, why him? How did he get to that exact patch of grass in Qatar?
That's the real story.
It is. So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive into the source material. We've got a really diverse stack of sources today.
We do. We're pulling from deep sports journalism, biographical profiles, and even reports from refugee advocacy groups like the UNHCR and SGDDA-SAM.
Right. Because we aren't just looking at the trophies this global icon has won. We want to look at the mechanics of his rise.
Yeah, we're going to explore what his story reveals about the psychology of resettlement, the systemic flaws in youth sports, and how a kid actually survives the leap from amateur to pro.
So to understand the sheer gravity of that World Cup goal, you really have to leave the pristine pitches of Qatar.
Right. You have to go all the way back to the year 2000.
Yes, to the Budaburam refugee camp in Ghana.
Because Alphonso's parents, Victoria and Debia, they were originally from Monrovia, Liberia.
But they got caught up in the really brutal crossfire of the Second Liberian Civil War.
It was a horrific situation.
It was. Debia, Alphonso's father, described their situation in the sources with this incredibly stark reality. He said, quote, "The only way you survive sometimes is you have to carry guns."
Wow.
Yeah, and he followed it up by saying, "We didn't have any interest in shooting guns, so we decided to just escape."
Which means they actively chose displacement over violence.
Exactly.
So they fled to neighboring Ghana, ending up in the Budaburam camp. And that's actually where Alphonso was born.
And the conditions there were just fraught with severe difficulties. Every hour of the day was basically a logistical puzzle of survival.
Just searching for clean water, securing food, trying to navigate the dangers of this massive temporary settlement.
Right. His mother, Victoria, she recalled those days of intense uncertainty in the sources. She said her constant prayer for her son was just to find a safe door.
A safe door. That's powerful.
Yeah, just a way for him to actually grow up without the constant threat of violence hanging over them.
And that safe door finally materialized when Alphonso was 5 years old.
Yes. The family entered a resettlement program, went through this rigorous interview process, and they were finally relocated to Canada.
They landed initially in Windsor, Ontario, before eventually making their way to Edmonton, Alberta.
Now, it's really tempting to view that moment as the happy ending. Like, okay, the family is safe.
Oh, but it's not the end at all.
No. Psychologically, resettlement is often the beginning of a completely different kind of trauma.
It absolutely is. I mean, you are trading physical danger for severe cultural and economic shock.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because for most kids, starting school in a new country is like being dropped onto an alien planet without a translator.
That's a great way to put it.
You don't know the rules, you don't know the language. You're dealing with a freezing new climate in Edmonton, of all places.
Which is brutal if you're coming from West Africa.
Exactly. And on top of that, you have parents who are entirely consumed by the sheer effort of keeping the lights on.
Right. Davy was working these grueling shifts in a chicken factory.
And Victoria was working as a cleaner.
Which forces the children into a very specific, high-pressure role in the family dynamic.
Oh, how so?
Well, in many resettled families, the kids actually learn the language first. So they become the crucial, invisible bridge between their family's old life and their new reality.
Oh, wow, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. Alphonso was one of 6 kids, and he was helping raise his 5 siblings while his parents worked these long shifts.
That's a massive cognitive and emotional load for such a young child.
It really is. But the sources reveal a fascinating mechanism for how Alphonso navigated that massive cultural divide.
He found a bypass, basically.
Yeah. In the materials from the refugee advocacy group SGDDA-SAM, Davies offers this incredibly powerful reflection. He literally said, "Football was my language."
I love that. It's such a brilliant way to frame it. He don't need to conjugate verbs to understand a pass, you know?
Exactly. When he started school, he couldn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
But the pitch was the one place where things just made sense.
Right. He didn't need a single English word to communicate to the other kids, hey, I belong here, I have value.
But belonging in a schoolyard is one thing.
Yeah.
Actually getting noticed by the professional sports machine is a whole different beast.
Oh, absolutely. And this brings up a massive systemic issue in North American youth sports.
You're talking about the pay-to-play model, right?
Yes, the pay-to-play model. The traditional youth soccer system in North America requires thousands of dollars in registration fees.
Plus expensive equipment.
Right. And it requires parents who have the time and the vehicles to drive kids to tournaments across the state or province every weekend.
Which, if you're working factory and cleaning shifts just to afford rent, those barriers are entirely insurmountable.
They really are. Raw talent alone, especially in marginalized communities, usually goes completely unnoticed simply because it's priced out of the system.
What's fascinating here is how the community ecosystem around Davies became so vital. It really started with his grade 6 teacher and sports coach at Mother Teresa Catholic School, Melissa Guzzo.
Right. She noticed this kid who had this, permanent smile on his face and was just naturally gifted.
But rather than just telling him he was doing a great job and leaving it at that, she actively bridged the gap. She connected him to a man named Tim Adams.
And Tim Adams is a really fascinating figure in this story.
It really is.
He founded the Free Footy League, which is this totally free after-school soccer program specifically designed for inner-city kids.
It removes the registration fees, provides the equipment, and eliminates the transportation barrier completely.
So Adams watches Davies play for just a few minutes at a tournament and immediately recognizes that this isn't just a fast kid.
Yeah, Adams noted that while other kids had athleticism, Alphonso had, quote, the mind.
Like he was seeing spatial geometry on the pitch completely differently than everyone else.
Exactly. So Adams calls up a local coach, Marco Basio, from the St. Nicholas Soccer Academy.
And Basio brings him in. And it's here that Edmonton really wraps its arms around him, you know?
Yeah, the coaches drove him to games. And crucially, Davies finds a peer support system.
Right. He befriends a boy named Cherno Funbule, who is a fellow Liberian immigrant.
And they helped each other out. Cherno helped him navigate things like drama class, and they were reading books together in broken English.
So you have this raw, undeniable talent finally meeting an accessible infrastructure supported by empathetic teachers and peers.
And that's how you build a superstar.
Yeah.
But, feeling safe in a supportive community league is one thing.
Right.
Surviving the ruthless, hyper-competitive meat grinder of professional academies is another.
Oh, it's a totally different world, because by the time he is 14, he leaves his family in Edmonton and moves to the Vancouver Whitecaps residency program.
14 years old, moving across the country.
Yeah, and in September 2015, he debuts for their under-16 team. And then the timeline gets genuinely dizzying.
It moves so fast.
By April 2016, a 15-year-old Alphonso is making his debut for the Whitecaps developmental professional team in the USL.
Which is essentially the minor leagues for Major League Soccer.
And in May 2016, still just 15 years old, he scores against LA Galaxy Fiston,
becoming the youngest goal scorer in the history of the United Soccer League.
Okay, wait, hold on. This is where I have to push back on the standard narrative a bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because the sources talk a lot about his mental fortitude and how his parents' survival instinct helped him play without fear.
Yeah, they emphasize that a lot.
And mental resilience is great. But we are talking about a 15-year-old kid taking physical tackles from 28-year-old, 200-pound professional center backs.
Right, literal grown men.
Exactly. You can't outthink a veteran defender stepping on your ankle. There had to be a physical or tactical reason he didn't just get physically crushed.
You're absolutely right to challenge that, because grit alone doesn't rewrite physics.
Thank you. So how did he do it?
Well, the sources touch on a few key biomechanical and tactical realities that allowed him to survive.
Okay, like what?
First, structurally. Davies had incredibly rapid fast-twitch muscle development and a very low center of gravity.
So he was just naturally built different.
Yeah, his acceleration wasn't just fast for his age, it was elite by adult standards. He survived those tackles largely because the veteran defenders physically could not catch him to lay a hit on him.
Wow. So he was essentially bypassing the physical confrontation entirely through sheer speed.
Exactly. But tactically, there's another fascinating element here.
What's that?
Because Davies grew up playing street-style soccer. And in community leagues, rather than rigid, highly tactical European-style academies, his play style was entirely unorthodox.
Oh, that makes sense. Veteran defenders are trained to read predictable, coached movements.
Precisely. And Davies was chaotic. He played with a raw, unprogrammed instinct that made him nearly impossible to predict.
So he's taking touches that a conventionally coached player wouldn't take.
Right, driving the ball into spaces that shouldn't mathematically make sense to a defender.
That makes so much more sense. It wasn't just that he was brave, he was a literal disruption to their defensive algorithm.
Exactly, and the Whitecaps realized pretty quickly they couldn't hold him back in the developmental league.
No kidding. So in July 2016, they signed him to a Major League Soccer contract, putting him in the top tier of North American soccer.
He becomes the youngest Whitecap in the MLS era.
And he makes his debut the very next day, stepping onto the pitch and immediately leaving adult defenders on the ground.
It's wild, and this professional rise happens on a parallel track with his national identity, too.
Right. In June of 2017, this deeply meaningful week occurs. He officially receives his Canadian citizenship.
And just days later, he debuts for the senior Canadian national team.
And true to form, he immediately makes history there as well. He scores a brace.
Which, for those who might not follow soccer jargon, means he scored 2 goals in a single game.
Right, against French Guiana. So he becomes Canada's youngest ever goal scorer, and he actually ends up winning the Golden Boot.
The award for the tournament's top overall scorer, all as a 16-year-old.
Just mind-blowing. As the Canadian national team coach John Herdman put it, Davies became the embodiment of what Canada aspires to be, a country that accepts all.
And having absolutely conquered North America at such a young age, the global heavyweights were inevitably going to come calling.
Which brings us to the European leap. In July 2018, the global powerhouse Bayern Munich agrees to sign Davies for an MLS record transfer fee.
A massive milestone.
He officially joins the German club in January 2019. But there's a really great subtle detail in the sources about this move that I think shows how grounded he remained.
The jersey number.
Yes. When he was in Vancouver, he wore the number 67. When he got to Bayern, he asked if he could keep 67, but their squad numbers didn't go that high.
So what did he do?
He asked for 39. Why? Because 39 was the exact number he wore on his very first day playing for the Whitecaps residency program as a 14-year-old.
Wow. It was his way of honoring his starting line.
Exactly. It's a brilliant tether to his roots.
It really is. But tactically, his move to Bayern Munich involves a massive transition that is crucial to understand.
Oh yeah, positional change, right.
Yeah, when Bayern bought him, he was an explosive winger,
Oh yeah.
an attacker. But at Bayern, they began playing him at left back, which is a defensive position.
Which, honestly, on paper, that sounds completely counterintuitive.
It does seem weird at first glance.
Right. Why would you take an MLS record transfer fee, buy a prodigy attacker, and then stick him in the defensive backline? That sounds like a demotion to me.
It does sound like a demotion if you look at it through the lens of traditional old-school soccer.
Okay, so how does modern soccer look at it?
Well, modern European football has completely redefined the fullback position. For a dominant, possession-heavy team like Bayern Munich, a left back isn't just a defender.
What are they then?
They are essentially an auxiliary winger. They need to bomb up and down the flank constantly.
Oh, I see.
By putting Davies at left back, Bayern allowed him to use his world-class speed to overlap the attackers and create these massive overloads on the wing.
And defensively, his speed acted as a massive insurance policy.
Precisely. Even if his defensive positioning as a young player wasn't perfect, his recovery pace was basically a cheat code.
So if a team tried to counterattack, Davies could just track back and close down gaps faster than almost anyone in the world.
Exactly. He adapted so well that he quickly became considered one of the absolute best in the world at that position.
Which is just crazy.
Yeah.
By the age of 19, he achieved the pinnacle of European club football, winning the UEFA Champions League with Bayern.
Part of a team that won 6 prestigious titles that year.
It's just incredible. But, the reality of elite sports is that it's physically unforgiving no matter how talented you are.
Yeah, injuries don't care about your backstory.
They really don't. And we do need to acknowledge a very current, bittersweet reality for Davies right now in the sources.
Which is really tough news.
Yeah. As we look toward the 2026 World Cup, despite everything he has achieved for Canadian soccer, he has officially been ruled out of Canada's opening match against Bosnia and Herzegovina.
And that's due to a hamstring injury, right?
Yes, unfortunately. It's a massive blow for him and the team.
The coaching staff remains optimistic for his return later in the tournament, but missing a home World Cup opener is devastating.
It really is. But his physical presence on the pitch for that one match doesn't diminish the impact he's having off it.
Not at all.
Because as his fame skyrocketed globally, he used his massive platform to look directly back at the exact place he came from.
And this is where his personal life and advocacy really come into focus. I
Yep.
mean, even as he's navigating his personal life, like, after a very public 5-year relationship with Canadian footballer Jordan Huitema ended in 2022,
Right.
he's now engaged to Cheyenne Jen.
Oh, the German musician and influencer?
Yeah, she's also an interior architecture student. They got engaged in Dubai in early 2025.
Wow, so he's building this whole new chapter of his life. But alongside all that personal growth, his advocacy work has just exploded.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's arguably his most important role.
I agree. Because in March 2021, the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, announced Davies as their newest Global Goodwill Ambassador.
This was historic. He became the first footballer and the first Canadian to ever hold this title.
And he explicitly stated that his own experiences made him want to speak up for refugees, to share their stories, and ensure they have access not just to survival necessities, but to education and sports.
Because he understands fundamentally that sports aren't just a game.
No, they are an integration tool.
Exactly. And he took this advocacy to the highest levels of global sports governance.
Right, you have to look at his speech at the FIFA Congress when North America was bidding to host the 2026 World Cup.
Because when a nation bids for a World Cup, they usually parade out politicians, economists, and stadium architects.
Yeah, they just want to talk about infrastructure and profit margin.
But the North American United bid did something completely different. They put Alphonso Davies on the stage.
And he didn't talk about tactical history or VIP seating.
Not at all.
He talked about a country opening its doors to a refugee family fleeing a bloody civil war.
He stood in front of the most powerful executives in world sports and delivered a sentiment that I think is the emotional core of this entire deep dive.
He said, and I quote, "As a refugee, you can't choose where you come from. But if someone believes in you, you can choose where you go."
If someone believes in you, you can choose where you go. It perfectly synthesizes his entire trajectory.
It really does. It's the intersection of his parents' desperate sacrifice, his own relentless work ethic, and the crucial intervention of the teachers, volunteer coaches, and communities in Edmonton.
The people who chose to believe in him and actively remove the barriers in his way.
The story of Alphonso Davies is just a masterclass in what happens when undeniable human talent is met with a welcoming community and a safe harbor.
It is absolute, living proof that a child's potential is entirely limitless if they're simply given the opportunity to feel safe enough to play.
But it also highlights the tragic reality of all the potential that remains trapped.
Yeah, Davies' story is exceptional, but the circumstances that allowed him to flourish really shouldn't be a rare anomaly.
No, they shouldn't. And that is exactly where I want to leave you today.
It's a lot to think about.
Think about this. Alphonso Davies made it out of the Booterbarum camp, went on to win the Champions League, and completely changed Canadian soccer history simply because his parents had the opportunity to fill out a single resettlement form. Now, think about the millions of displaced people, over 120 million globally, according to the sources currently sitting in refugee camps around the world right now.
It's a staggering number.
It is. How many other world-changing athletes, how many brilliant scientists or visionary artists are sitting in those camps today? Their immense potential entirely hidden from the world simply because their parents haven't yet had the chance to fill out that exact same piece of paper.